Hello, alumni. This is Mark Tykocinski. I'm the provost at Thomas Jefferson University, and I want to thank you for joining me this evening and giving me an opportunity to share with you an update on what's going on campus and a lot of the exciting things that are going on along the way. So I'd like to just start by saying that we're about 3.5 years post the merger of Philadelphia University and Thomas Jefferson University. And there's just an incredible amount of collaborative interaction and other great things bubbling up among our faculty. Just one sampling here from two of our faculty, Severino Alfonso and Lucia Cifolia in CABE, have put together this incredibly creative installation they call Synesthesia, and there's actually a synesthetic research and design lab here. And this is going to be heading to the ECC Architecture Biennial in Venice, and the description is there: an exploration of abstracted bodily data projected back onto an analog interface combining elements of man and machine. Just a sampling of the kind of things that are going on, pandemic or not. Fashion design moves forward strongly. Here's our design student, Kinley Lingenfelter, who's a scholarship fund recipient. The students are continue to look outwards. We had this project among our students in Center City on how we can pay attention to the homeless and the people that are sitting there on the street in public spaces. And that experience was written up in an article. And then in an entirely different area, the most amazing thing, and I'm not violating HIPAA here because this was shown on TV this past week, but this gentleman, a 42-year-old gentleman, had a stroke, lost his mobility in his left hand arm, and there was a machine, a computer, brain interface that was implanted. And you see him here after about 2 months of practicing. And I'm actually going to show you this clip here. Mind you, this is entirely being driven by his brain waves activating an exoskeleton. Again, it's his thoughts that are, it's implanted in the motor cortex, and that's sending a signal to the exoskeleton, and he's manipulating that. And this is what he's achieved after just 2 months of training with this. It's really, really quite remarkable. And that's sort of the frontier work that's going on. But then we continue to soldier on amidst the tumult and the pandemic. And I think it's important to understand that what our faculty and staff have achieved in keeping our campus open. We were only 3 universities to have in-person during the fall semester, is not to be taken for granted. Over here on the left, you see that other institutions in town had plenty of challenge in trying to come back even this spring. And yet, we've got all this incredible stuff going on here at our university. You see here, Philly native, the first African-American student to be accepted into our biopharmaceutical engineering master's program in our Jefferson Institute for Bioprocessing. We just launched it a year and a half ago, and our timing couldn't have been better given the incredible need for biologics production, vaccine production, and training in those areas. And we've emerged as the premier place for that to happen for pharma in this country. There you see one of our medical students who won a significant marathon, and one of our graduates, Marcela Nunez, is the co-chair of Biden's COVID task force. And I had an opportunity to write an article about what our university learned by staying open in the pandemic. The students are highly engaged. They launched this global health conference all at the same time that in the background, we grappled with the pandemic. We've created, this is a sampling of the dashboards. We track just about everything you could imagine. And one of the things we're incredibly proud of is that to date, we don't have a single incident of classroom transfer of COVID-19, either among the students or among the faculty. Where there have been instances, it's been off campus. You can see here on the bottom, there was an off-campus party way back in the middle of the fall. There was a surge, but then the students really stepped forward in an amazing way to allow us to keep the campus open. And so what have we been doing? And if you look on the East Falls campus, we launched what we call our hybrid flexible or high flex teaching and learning. Back in April, we took over 2,700 course modules and brought them online. It was just a heroic effort by our faculty, by our informatics IS&T group, and that continues on into the fall. And even for the students that are here in person on campus, there's a significant amount of material that's still transmitted on the online. So it's really a hybrid where small group interactions, design labs, scientific labs, other forums occur in person, but then you have other content that's being delivered online with a option many students can have to do even more online and not come to certain classes. In housing, we had an off-campus decompression into a hotel, but in spring we're back with everybody on campus. We've got grab-and-go dining. There is a very elaborate coronavirus testing regimen that we go through. Winter sports, at least were canceled, and with really no choice around that. But a lot of alternative ways for venues for student engagement. And what I've told our faculty and staff is I just couldn't be more proud of what they've done. And I said, we did it. In 3.5 years, we've merged 2 universities, and that includes an exemplary full Middle States accreditation for the merged university, new university bylaws and handbooks that brought 2 different faculties and very different sets of bylaws and handbooks together with uniformity, restructuring our colleges, integrating countless central administrative subsystems, and all with strong financial performance, meeting budget and often exceeding budget, and at the same time moving forward with cross-disciplinary programmatic innovation. At the same time, we launched a new curriculum in the medical college. We kept in-person classes open during a pandemic, as I mentioned, with our high flex educational model. And there, of course, the research enterprise, which continues to go along humming and growing and expanding our team science. The pandemic proves one thing as far as I'm concerned. The naysayers, those that were saying before this, that in-person education is obsolete, that online would triumph, I really think that the pandemic has given the lie to that. What we have found is students crave a campus experience. In-person is alive and well and will continue into the future. But that said, it's not going to be the same in person. We're going to start to blend in more online content, more remoting in. And really the high flex that we developed in the pandemic will evolve, but a version of it will likely continue into the future. At the same time, amidst all of this, there's a lot of trauma that I would say. The line that I'm using these days is, "We will all be a bit post-traumatic." And in fact, one can learn from the literature on trauma. Part of it is reconstructing the trauma story. All of us, in our own way, uh, big and small, will have to sort of put this in perspective and really create a narrative for ourselves around what has been going on and what happened. At the same time, there's this useful tool which I call mentally compartmentalizing, where you can't really sort of repress what you've been through, but you sort of compartmentalize it and put it off to the side and move forward. And there's this great quote from a 1993 article. People are remarkably resilient in the face of adversity. Individuals often emerge from a crisis with new coping skills, closer relationships with family and friends, broader priorities, and a richer appreciation for life. Accordingly, investigators need to consider the possibility of a new and better level of adaptation that reflects personal growth rather than a return to the status quo. And so, out of all of this, what we are confident we will achieve is adapting at the university level, at the student level, and emerge stronger in many ways. We are laser focused on well-being, in particular for students and for faculty and staff. This is a brochure that we created promoting well-being in the learning environment. You see 2 pages from the inside. And we're hitting hard on this point, really, to talk about what is it that we can help our students in terms of coping with a reality that they uniquely have been confronted with. Now, if we step back now and look at Thomas Jefferson University and Jefferson Health, this is a very, very different university and health system. Here you see a map of the sites in the tri-state area where we are. Amidst there are these 5 blue TJUs, meaning that we have 2 major campuses, one in East Falls, one in Center City. But we also have 3 satellite campuses now, one for our physician assistant program, another one for our nursing program, and another one where we have the Jefferson Institute for Bioprocessing. And we have achieved scale that for most of you alumni, is a very, very different university here. You can see some of the stats, 34,500 plus employees, the number of nurses and physicians, 2,700 faculty overall across the university. And we now are 10 colleges and 4 schools with over 160 undergraduate and graduate programs. And the creativity reflected in part by the 1,000 plus patents that have emerged is really remarkable. We're now 8,200 students strong and a very large alumni base of 68,500 alumni. And what we're particularly proud of is this 97% success rate among our undergraduates in securing jobs or going on to graduate school. This is really in a league of its own compared to the vast, vast majority of universities and colleges that are out there. And we also contribute to our community, and it's been estimated here at about $432 million annual of community benefit. Our research portfolio has really grown dramatically, $165 million this year in sponsored research awards. But where are we going? And I'd like to just spend a couple of minutes now in sharing with you how we're thinking strategically about the next phase. We started off as 2 universities that came together. A health sciences university, one of 7 so-called health sciences universities in the country, and at the same time, a design-focused university with an incredible legacy. And we've now come together, and we're beginning to think of ourselves along 3 dimensions. And this is sort of a tripartite model. What we are aspiring to, and I think what we're well along the way to, is being the model professions-focused university. On the bottom of the slide, you can see the four key components of what we call our strategic academic framework. We talk about fields of tomorrow. The students that we're training now will, when they're in the heart of their careers, will be in a very, very different work world. And so we have to train them to be able to adapt and to grow into that work world. What is industrial design? Not now, but what will it be in 2050? What will nursing be in 2050? And we have to think and train them with the skill sets to achieve that. Also, this notion of a curated, personalized education. No two students studying along their professional pathways should have the exact same training, but it should be adaptable, allow for curation. With the merger, we're no longer a regional university, but we're a national research university. That's how we're being ranked. And on that, we draw on our community of scholars. And then increasingly, we are positioning ourselves to be a distinctive global university. Sometime down the road, I'd love to have a chance to do a webinar just on that point. It is amazing what our global leaders at Jefferson on both main campuses are accomplishing these days. And it's powered by a vision into the future. And I don't have the time to delve into all of this, but let me just give you a sense. I think all of you are aware of our Nexus Transdisciplinary Education, which really was pioneered in the years with Philadelphia University. We continue that and take it further. And we've also now introduced this high flex notion of bringing remote education tools in line with in-person tools. There's what we're calling here C10 student engagement model, and I want to say a little bit more about that in a separate slide. But we're also starting to think about something we're calling academic passports, meaning every student, when they're admitted to this university, will in effect have an admission card to a number of other universities where they can freely go to take courses and fill in perhaps offerings that we don't have here. And by the way, that's not just regional, but that'll be global. That'll be a major part of the value proposition of this university. And for doing that, we pull on this pooled partnership model where we have specific university level partnerships, which allow us to have students freely transit from each of our respective universities to each other. I mentioned global centers. On the research side, we're all about focus, programmatic research themes, areas that we have defined where we want to be top 5 in the country over the next decade or two. And some of those evolve into centers of research excellence, which really can drive philanthropic giving as well as relationships with industry. To taking our design studios to a next level, starting to create what I call data science hubs. Every one of our professional areas and professional trained students will have to have some immersion in data sciences. And launching an Institute for Advanced Studies. We've already had some visiting scholars through that institute. And starting alternative sources of revenue. The Jefferson Institute for Bioprocessing is what we call an academic business line, meaning the revenue in there comes from industry paying us to train as opposed to traditional tuition. And we're also now starting to really key in on taking these our two campuses and making them true destination campuses, paying attention to the architecture and landscaping and sculptures and other art installations on these campuses. At the same time, we have a vision to the future that calls on certain key academic capital projects. Probably the top level one right now is for the East Falls campus of what we're calling a living learning center, which is a residential hall plus learning environment, which will accommodate over 350 students. At the same time, this will be situated on the Ravenhill campus, and the field in the background will be redone as part of this project as well. We're also starting to plan for a major new design center, also on the East Falls campus, which would house some of the programs of DEC and CABE. And then on the research side, the big project is the Caroline Kimmel Research Building. We have this incredible philanthropic gift of $7 million towards the building, which we hope to have up by 2027. And then other research space that we're renovating, for instance, the remainder of Jeff Alumni Hall. We've completely redone that building over time. So those are the elements from the big picture, but what is it that we're looking to do vis-a-vis our students? And so I'd like to talk a bit about a new vision for professional education. Uh, our goal for our students now and into the future is to provide creative and flexible training pathways for a broader set of career pathways. Every one of the professional areas will likely branch out into a much richer set of potential career options, whether it's in areas of design and architecture and textiles and fashion, or whether it's in the health professional areas. At the same time, we expect lifelong learning across a continuum of medical education, and we're really starting to position ourselves to play a critical role with a lifelong connection to our students who become our alumni. And rather than just think about competencies, but also, and here it's shown, he says the 4C physician, but this would be equivalent for any of our professional areas. We also start to talk now about human qualities and ways of thinking. It's the tripartite that we have to cultivate as we move forward. I just wanted to say something about this slide, which I just created the other day, to start to think about how can we really become multidimensionally engaged with our students. How can we make it that a student is so embedded here that they wouldn't dream of leaving and going somewhere else? Student retention is a big part of our focus, but also driving honors admission, driving student satisfaction, and alumni engagement. And so, what if every student had assigned defined mentor or mentors, an advisor, as they do now? They were meshed with those that are involved in athletics, with other members of their athletic team. So that creates another sphere that engages them here. Nexus transdisciplinary learning has lots of small group immersion for our students, and that creates a little community of its own. There's community outreach. If these students are involved in a project, as so many of us students are, they would think twice about leaving to go to another city. Global engagement. And global engagement isn't just going and doing a semester abroad. We have examples where classes are being held simultaneously online in small groups here and, for instance, in Colombia in South America. And then there's the notion of alumni engagement. How do we engage what if we had every student linked to an alumnus or other ways of engaging our students? And so we challenged our students in the context of working between student affairs and our Office of Institutional Advancement of how could we create venues that would start to more actively bring our alumni together with our students. And the students came up with two concepts here, one of which will be held on February 25th, next week, which they call Leading in the Real World. There will be a panelist, in this case, one of the graduates, one of our alumni, Drew Morrisroe, who also happens to be a member of the Jefferson Academic Board and the parent board, along with two other alumni from accounting and management, talking about leadership in various dimensions, and there'll be Q&A sessions along with that. And then on April 14th, industry networking. And so the idea here will be to have a TED-like talk, which is followed by small group breakout discussions. And we're actually looking for alumni coming from a variety of industries shown here: fashion and textiles, health professions, business, life sciences, social sciences, nonprofit and government, architecture, who will essentially, along with assigned students, we'll have 1 to 3 alumni working with an assigned student leader in each of those breakout sessions, really talking about how their career evolved, what they got out of being at this university, and how that set them up for the future, and really providing guidance to those students. So I really urge you to consider participating in this and reaching out to our alumni office at alumni@jefferson.edu. When we think about the 21st century education in the professional areas that we are interested in, I like to think in 3 dimensions. One is, of course, standard curriculum. But at this university, we talk a lot about co-curriculum and extracurriculum. Co-curriculum is sort of that tailoring specific experiences and exposures to students that only students, even in a given type of major, will experience. So it's very much part of this notion of curating education, but really cultivating cross-cutting ways of thinking. Extracurriculum, we talk about things like our community outreach, looking outside of the university and immersing our students in a variety of different programs that enrich them extracurricularly. An example of this comes out of the medical college here, something we call Medicine Plus. Yes, we train medical students in medicine, but it's that plus, the cross-cutting way of thinking, that enrich them. And over the last few years, we've had a scholarly inquiry requirement of all students to do a scholarly project in those areas. For instance, Medicine Plus Design for design thinking, Medicine Plus Data Sciences for computational thinking. And we've created assured admission linkages for all of those. And in fact, it was the initial discussions around Medicine Plus Design that brought to our attention this incredible place in East Falls called Philadelphia University. And the world-class programming in areas of design and fashion, textiles, and architecture, among others. And it's just very gratifying to see that. So we created this program called Gestalt, happens to be focused on health. A lot of stuff that has nothing to do with health, I assure you. And here you see 3 of our Canbar College of Design, Engineering, and Commerce students on the right, paired up with 3 students from the medical college. And in a project together, they came up with what now is a startup company called Conexo, to where they essentially focused on the intravenous lines and the connections that cause infections in patients. And they came up with an incredibly creative adapter, which essentially would prevent bacteria from touching the surfaces of the connectors where IV lines connect with each other. And then on the extracurricular side, there's just a wealth of activities of our students. Many of these programs have been founded and developed by the students, let alone run by the students moving forward. And I often say that I challenge anyone to find another university that has the richness of real, not brochures, but the richness of community outreach and other activities that really touch their surrounding communities. I want to end in a few minutes, but really just talking a little bit about the research side of the enterprise. We've been on this journey to build team science, largely originally on the biomedical side. Here you just see in the last 5 years, the growth of our extramural funding portfolio. Total grant awards, if you include federal, non-federal, and all direct and indirect, is now over $200 million, which is an incredible journey that we've been on in building the research effort. You'll note a lot of it is driven by what on the right column, those programmatic grants, which is the team science that we do. And I'm really proud that just in the last year, we've had over 150 publications on COVID-19. So we are doing our part in terms of the research and discovery and development that needs to happen to fight this pandemic. On the clinical research side, there's been an equally impressive, growth in programming and the amount of research activity. If you look at the NIH clinical trial revenue from 2.3 million annual to 8.1 million, the number of NIH clinical trials, threefold to increase to 39. So remarkable growth of our research enterprise. And importantly, the research is not just biomedical research here. So we've invested significantly on the East Falls campus, by creating a research administration center of excellence satellite office, a quick contract procedure, conduct and compliance services were deployed, and out of this has come a remarkable 74 submissions just in the last few years, a significant increase into whatever had been the case. 32 were funded. The grants tend to be a bit smaller, or a lot smaller. That's just the way it is in areas of the humanities and things that tie to design, but it's still a very substantial number of $1.3 million driven. And importantly, 40 different faculty contributed to this, every East Falls college and school represented here, and 50 different funding agencies, including 8 for NSF. I'm going to end here with one last thought. Jefferson has its horse in the race for a COVID-19 vaccine. And while we're a bit of the hare, a bit of the tortoise, to the hare being the RNA vaccines, we are convinced that our horse in the race will play a significant role down the line as we try to vaccinate and deal with the vaccine requirements of the 7.8 billion people on planet Earth. We happen to call ours Coravax. It's developed by Matthias Schnell, who's the director of the Jefferson Vaccine Center. It's based on a rabies in over 400 million people. And he simply tacked on the key COVID-19 protein that you need to stimulate a vaccine immune response against. And the data have been absolutely remarkable here. It's been licensed for the developing world to one of the world's largest manufacturers of vaccine, Bharat Biotech in India. And it'll be going into the first humans, hopefully by the end of this month or first week in March. So certainly this vaccine will be available as if variants come up that are not protected by the current vaccine and things develop beyond that. So I'm going to stop there and turn it back over to Jeff Spence, who will take some of your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Tykocinski. And for all of you who have any questions for Dr. Tykocinski, please use the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen, or if you're using an iPad, at the top of your screen, and we will take them as they come in. Our first question deals with student recruitment in the age of COVID. How have we seen recruitment impacted by COVID over this past year, and are we seeing trends for next year?
Yeah, great question. I appreciate your keying in on that incredibly important point here. So what we did post merger of the two universities was create a central office for enrollment management, headed up by an incredibly capable leader, Aaron Finn. At the same time, our marketing department on the university side is headed up by an equally competent, incredible individual named Pat Baldridge. And I think this secret sauce to our success so far has been this marrying together of enrollment management with marketing to target being able to develop, the right kinds of programs. Uh, in this sort of year of COVID, we had to adapt, and there was incredible creativity. So while we couldn't have student-led tours of campus, we created these signs with QR codes to allow people to, uh, lead themselves around the campus. And it was all timed and scheduled, and it was incredibly well received. As a consequence, and I don't want to jinx it, but as we now look to the fall of this year, our admits are up substantially. Now we'll have to see how that converts, but it's incredibly reassuring, and it's really bucking the trend of most colleges of universities in the country that are already seeing drops there. So we'll see how that goes. We'd like to think that it's the education we provide, all the innovations, but at the same time, incredible work being done, as I said, by enrollment management and marketing. There is a challenge, though, and the challenge has been in terms of students being able to pay. So we did have a bump in accounts receivable, and during the spring semester, and we're working very closely with students to help them navigate through all of this. We had special discounting that we were able to apply, related to the COVID and the pandemic. So there's a lot of hurt out there. There's no question that the financial challenges are touching everyone on planet Earth, are touching many, many people in this country, and certainly touching many of the families of our students. But we're navigating through all of this, and the good news is students still recognize the importance of this education and their families as we move forward.
That is good news. We have another question related to Corovax, and wondering about its protection against new variants, and whether the new variants are being incorporated into the vaccine.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, work in progress. We don't, we have gotten to, we're looking at that through the Vaccine Center and Matthias Schnell's group. So we can't answer that question. And I think an important thing to understand is some of this in terms of variants, and now I'm speaking, my background is actually as a molecular immunologist. I'm not an expert even remotely in vaccines, but I do know a little bit about immunology. The reality is that it's not necessarily going to be all or none with these variants, right? It may be that the vaccine works, but it's just less effective in the vaccine. Now, that can be, in principle, that can be compensated for by an increased titer of the antibodies and the immunity that you develop there. So if Corovax, for example, drives higher titers of antibodies, and it also has a more diverse antibody pool that it generates, then potentially even if though there's a bit lower affinity, you might find that it works. But again, it all has to be determined empirically, and those experiments are going on. At the same time, it is the intention of the Vaccine Center to try to keep up with some of the major variants. And so work will be done to create vaccine variants now that address these COVID-19 variants. So more to come. It's it's a fluid situation, but we'll see how it all evolves.
I think for our final question, one of our attendees asks, for alumni who want to spread the good word about what's happening at Jefferson and help with student recruitment, what do you think is the key takeaway to get out into the community?
The Jefferson is not only a post-merger of Philadelphia University and Thomas Jefferson University. Not only are we alive and well, but all of the legacy programs of both universities that came together are alive and well. And at the same time, there's, the place has gained in scale and depth of programming. And there's just a lot of very, very talented deans and faculty here and administrative leaders who are envisioning a very, very bright future for this university. And we have a clear vision of where we want to go. We are, as I said, positioning ourselves as a premier, the university of the professions for professional training, a global university, and a national research university. And those aren't just words, but it is really coming to life and will be an ever more exciting place for students to come and for faculty to build their careers.
And I think that's a wonderful note to end the evening on. Thank you so much, Dr. Tykocinski. And thank you to everyone who joined us this evening. We invite you to get connected with each other and with Jefferson in our brand new Jefferson Alumni Network. It's an exclusive community for Jefferson, Philadelphia University, and textile alumni that you can access at alumninetwork.jefferson.edu. We also have a number of exciting upcoming alumni events. And just next week, we will be hosting our occupational therapy alumni for a kickoff of a new volunteer organization, our Jefferson OT Alumni Network. On Tuesday, the Jefferson College of Nursing is hosting a celebration of Black History Month with a continuing nursing education program from bystander to upstander, the Allies Journey. And our Workout Wednesday series continues next Wednesday with a resistance band workout. So dust off your bands and join us at lunchtime. And Dr. Tykocinski mentioned our upcoming Campus to Career alumni student programs. If you are interested in participating in our program on April 14th, which will focus on industries and connect alumni with our undergraduate students, please remember to email us at alumni@jefferson.edu. Thank you. Have a wonderful night and be safe.